ad hoc committee, through its work, contributed in a small way towards further restoring the dignity and the respect of this august House. Honourable Speaker and members, the primary mandate given to the ad hoc committee was to ascertain the fitness or otherwise of the board. The starting point had to be whether the SABC board members exercised their fiduciary duties as expected by the various pieces of the relevant legislation. These duties included, amongst others, that the board protect the financial and human resource assets of the organization. So, Speaker, one cannot divorce the responsibility of the board to carry out effective oversight over the SABC administration, as is their fiduciary duty, from what prevails currently in the corporate governance of the SABC. In the absence of getting to the bottom of the root cause of the problems at the SABC, the interim board and the permanent board would be set up for failure from the very onset. Honourable members, to argue that the inquiry should have ceased with its work once the chairperson resigned would have been an exercise in futility, in as far as making sure that the SABC of tomorrow is in a better place than the SABC of today. Speaker, the SABC board was dysfunctional and incorrect at the time that the ad hoc committee commenced its work. In reporting back to this House, we recommend that the National Assembly formally dissolve the SABC board, including the three executive board members. Speaker, Section 55(2)(a) of the Constitution is very clear in as far as it's obligatory for the National Assembly to provide for mechanisms to ensure that all executive organs of state in the national sphere of government are accountable to it. And furthermore, Honourable Speaker, Section 56 states that the National Assembly may summons any person to appear before it to give evidence on oath or affirmation, as well as to produce documents. Speaker and honourable members, from the very beginning of the work of the ad hoc committee, the then chairperson of the SABC board and the SABC executive directors and management displayed behaviour in total disregard to these sections of the Constitution. Members of this House were told that they are not fit to exercise oversight over the SABC because members were biased or had already arrived at a predetermined outcome. The then SABC chairperson went as far as taking the National Assembly to court in an attempt to frustrate or delay this House from exercising its constitutional obligation. Speaker, in an unprecedented act of defiance of the Constitution and the rules of the National Assembly, the then chairperson, accompanied by executive management of the SABC, walked out of a parliamentary committee session and went out to tell South Africa and the world that the work of the ad hoc committee, and by extension the work of the National Assembly, was tantamount to a kangaroo court. Honourable members, it is our view that the National Assembly, and indeed Parliament, can never again allow this level of undermining to reoccur. Speaker, at its 53rd conference, the ANC resolved that a stable corporate governance mechanism is required to provide long-term stability. This includes strengthening the SABC's accountability to Parliament, to the shareholder, and to the public, and that the public ownership of the SABC is central to its existence and its sustainability. Speaker, in the 4 years since this resolution was adopted, we have seen at least 3 SABC boards, at least 4 group chief executive officers. In this period, the SABC has been plagued by many challenges, including divisions at board level. Human resource management and compliance with policy is almost non-existent, as can be seen by the high number of CCMA and Labour Court challenges that the SABC has faced and lost at a very high cost. Members, this leadership instability has a direct bearing on the demise of good corporate governance within the institution. As can be seen in the Auditor General report, irregular expenditure amounting to 5.1 billion rand and fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 92.8 million indicates the extent of the problem. As we stand here today, Madam Speaker, the SABC has an acting Chief Executive Officer, an acting Chief Financial Officer, and an acting Chief Operating Officer. This state of affairs cannot be allowed to continue. Speaker, the SABC must have a credible accounting authority, which is in line with the Public Broadcasting Act, the Public Finance Management Act, and the Companies Act. The ad hoc committee recommends that the process of appointing an interim board and eventually a permanent board must be expedited. Honourable Speaker and members, the Bill of Rights in Section 16 guarantees freedom of expression, which includes freedom of the press and other media, as well as freedom to receive or impart information and ideas. The services expected of the SABC are at the very center of our constitutional democracy. And as a public broadcaster, the SABC is the supreme vehicle through which the very important provisions as enshrined in our Bill of Rights must become reality, enjoyed and experienced by all South Africans. Honourable members, significant entry barriers remain in place in the commercial broadcasting sector. Efforts to regulate the sector, to enforce effective competition has not produced the desired results. It is recommended by the ad hoc committee that any SABC contract that seeks to do business with its competitors must be reviewed. Speaker, the SABC has a footprint that covers every corner of the country and is accessible to South Africans from every walk of life, the majority of whom are the working class and the lower income groups, including pensioners and the aged, both black and white. With this as a background, we raise serious concerns around the fact that the 24-hour news channel and the ENCO channel are only available on pay TV. This has the effect of excluding many South Africans on the basis of affordability. The SABC is a national asset and also a national key point, and therefore must at all times be managed by competent and appropriately skilled women and men who are adequately vetted in order to mitigate against obvious state security exposure. Speaker, those given the task and responsibility of managing this very important asset on behalf of South Africans must be beyond reproach and must be held to the highest level of accountability. Finally, Speaker and honourable members, this inquiry took place with maximum transparency. It took place with absolute fairness and consistency. Of course, Speaker and honourable members, like in all aspects of life, there will be those who support the product of this ad hoc committee, and likewise, there will be those that criticize or reject our report. Notwithstanding the criticism, we take solace from the words uttered from this very podium on the 26th of March 1999 during his farewell speech to Parliament. Madiba said, and I quote, "I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all parties represented in this Parliament for their contribution to the progress we have made. Though we have our differences, often important and sometimes profound, we have as a collective demonstrated our overriding commitment to the new order that we have together established. We have ensured that this Parliament is no rubber stamp in the hands of government and given birth to a new democratic political culture, close quotes. Madam Speaker, the ad hoc committee remained true to the sentiments echoed by President Mandela. And with that, on behalf of the ad hoc committee, we table the report published on the 27th of February for your consideration and adoption. I thank you.
The Honourable Waters.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, at the outset, let me thank the Chair of the Ad Hoc Committee, Honourable Smith, for the manner in which he chaired the committee. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you. Millions of South Africans tuned in to see how Parliament was going to save the SABC, and many were surprised at how MPs from across the political spectrum held the Minister and board members to account. In the main, political differences were put aside for the good of the people, and I want to thank all my colleagues on the committee for that. Speaker, the 82-page report has all the ingredients of a Shakespeare tragedy, from treachery, corruption, deceit, intimidation, abuse of power, trickery, and sheer greed, with a modern twist of communications being intercepted by the State Security Agency. The main characters in this tragedy are the Minister of Communications, Honourable Faith Mthambi, and Mr. Hladi Motsoeneng, likened to Lady Macbeth and Lord Macbeth, with the journalists and staff being their victims. Both the Minister and Mr. Mshladi believed that the SABC was their own fiefdom to do as they pleased to further a broader political agenda. Their reign of terror was aided and abetted by some, but not all, the members of the board, the company secretary, and by the majority of MPs serving on the Communications Portfolio Committee. I am proud to state that DA MPs did everything in their power to expose the minister's blatant abuse of power. In addition, she committed perjury by giving the committee false evidence while under oath. This, Madam Speaker, is of such serious nature that criminal charges must be brought against the minister. But let's start at the beginning of the minister's term of office back in 2014, where on the 26th of September, the minister signed a Memorandum of Incorporation, the MOI, for the SABC. This MOI, as Honourable Davis pointed out on the 8th of February, in a letter to the then board chairperson, Professor Mugabe, would destroy the independence of the public broadcaster and would waiver the requirement for the board to advertise and shortlist candidates who apply for the CEO position and the COO position. Paragraph 912 states, and I'm quoting, "During her evidence, the minister insisted that amendments to the MOI were effected in accordance with both the Broadcasting Act and the Companies Act. She stated that although legislation did not require her to do so, the minister had consulted the board on the amendments as a courtesy before they were submitted to the Companies and Intelligent Property Commission, commonly known as SIPCO. She also briefed the Portfolio Committee on the MOI in June 2015. According to the minister, neither the board nor the Portfolio Committee had raised any reservations about the impact of the amendments or the manner in which they were processed," close quotes. Let us unpack the paragraph. No MOI, I repeat, no MOI was ever submitted to SIPCO. The ad hoc committee asked SIPCO for proof of any submission by the minister, which they failed to provide because there simply wasn't any. It's a pity the minister's not even here today. With regards to the minister's statement that neither the board nor the Portfolio Committee had raised any reservations about the impact of the amended MOI, well, the facts speak for themselves, Minister. The minutes of the board meeting clearly show that some board members did have reservations with regards to the MOI. And as far as the Portfolio Committee minutes are concerned, the DA's Honourable Davis, as well as the COPE MPs and the EFF MPs, all raised reservations. So why the lies, Minister? Well, I can answer that for you. You knew that the amendments to the MOI, probably assisted by Mr. Motsoeneng, were a transgression of the Broadcasting Act. And in fact, in the report, we state that the MOI signed in October 2014, as well as the proposed amendments to the Broadcasting Act, demonstrate efforts to concentrate power in the ministry by curtailing and removing the powers of both the board as the accounting authority and Parliament's role in the appointment and removal of non-executive board members. It also strips the board of its role in the appointment of executives. So what the Minister was trying to do was remove Parliament out of the equation and silence us and do what she pleased with the board of the SABC. In addition, paragraph 2322 states that the committee also notes from board minutes of a meeting that took place on the 7th of July 2014, the Minister may have directly or indirectly pressurized the board to appoint Mr. Motsoeneng in the COO position. Was it coincidental that the Minister just happened to be lurking in the passages of the SABC at 11 o'clock at night on the very night that the board decided to appoint Mr. Motsoeneng as a COO? I think not. She was there to put pressure on the board to do her bidding. And despite the Public Protector having found adverse findings against Mr. Motsoeneng, the Minister still found it fit not to advertise the position of COO and to appoint him into that position without having the necessary qualifications. Shame on you, Minister. So, Speaker, the ad hoc committee found that the Minister displayed incompetence in carrying out her responsibilities. In addition, the Minister interfered in some of the board's decision-making processes. The report recommends that given the Minister's violations, Parliament must refer these violations of the Constitution, the Privileges Act, the Executive Code of Ethics and the Broadcasting Act to the Ethics Committee and the Presidency for processing. In fact, we call on the President to reconsider her position in the Cabinet. As the Executive Members Ethics Act dictates that the Public Protector investigate any violations, we, the DA, will write to the Public Protector for such an investigation. In conclusion, Speaker, the late, great George Michael said, we've got to have faith. Unfortunately, the DA no longer has faith in Minister Mutambi, and she must be fired. I thank you very much, and the DA supports the report.
The Honourable Mokoena.
Thank you, Speaker. Let me greet the leadership of the EFF, in particular the TG and the DSG. Look, Speaker, the problems of the SABC are symptomatic of a fascist and apartheid state that believes that the state must colonize and control national communications for purposes of sowing propaganda and for consolidating power. It is an ideology that has its roots in Hitler's Third Reich with his minister Joseph Goebbels. That's where it comes from. So what happens is that the SABC is being used to control national journalistic practices, to control programming, and to control culture and entertainment for purposes of narrow propaganda. We saw what happened at the Metro FM Awards with Mabala Noise, the corrupt Mabala Noise. So fundamentally, at the heart of the problems of the SABC is that it's being used to undermine democracy and to fight internal battles of the SABC. This is what we heard in the evidence given to the ad hoc committee. We heard that it was used to stifle election campaigns for opposition parties, in particular the EFF. We heard that it was used to elevate individuals within the ANC in order to fight for the soul of the ANC. We heard that it was used as a tool of a much larger scheme of handing over state-owned entities to the corrupt family of the Guptas. But the report fails to place the SABC saga at the heart of the state capture. The EFF made the point that the report must make the point that the SABC was at the heart of state capture. However, the report does make some key interventions. First, it identifies governance failures of the SABC, including the fiasco caused by the incompetent Minister Mutambi, who failed to steer the entity in the interest of South African public. It recommends that criminal prosecutions of corrupt individuals in the entity, and most importantly, the recommendation to the President to fire the incompetent minister who is not here today. We sincerely hope that the President will set aside his factional and self-enrichment interests and do the right thing for once in his life. The EFF supports the report in the interest...
Point of order, Chair.
What is the point of order? Please take your seat, Honorable Mokoena.
According to Rule 85, when the member is going to make allegations to the President or to the member of this House, must make it through the substantive motion. So he cannot say the President is corrupt or is doing this thing without putting it on the table. Thank you.
That point of order is sustained. Honorable Mokoena, you of course know this, that if you are going to make, I'm just on the floor, Honorable
Speaker,
Dozie.
can
I am
ask you
speaking,
to
Honorable
consider
Dozie. I
our
am
intervention
speaking,
before you
Honorable
rule, because
Dozie. Take your
Honorable
seat.
Mokoena did not say such
Take
things.
your seat. I am on the floor. Honorable Mokoena, I am addressing you. Would you like to withdraw what you said or submit what allegations you are making through a substantive motion?
Chair, a substantive motion was tabled to this House.
No, I'm talking about now. I'm
No.
talking about right now, in terms of what you've said right now. Could you please withdraw?
Is the chair saying that
I'm
I must submit a substantive motion now?
No, I'm not
What are you
saying you
saying?
must submit a substantive motion now. I'm
Yes.
saying withdraw what you said.
No,
If you
because-
don't want to withdraw, then the alternative you have is to then come back with a substantive motion.
But, Speaker,
No, I
please,
don't want to interact with you. I don't want us to have a dialogue.
okay, no, that's fine. I withdraw.
Okay. Okay, proceed.
It recommends that criminal prosecutions of corrupt individuals in the entity, most importantly, it recommends that the minister must fire the President must fire Minister Mutambi, who is incompetent. The EFF supports the report in the interest of rebuilding the SABC and its governance. We support the report in the interest of rebuilding and restoring our constitutional democracy. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The SABC is today a cautionary tale replete with all the high drama and trappings that could easily make up a complex thriller in one of the many fictional movies on its channels. It is a tale of unchecked greed, power, corruption, mismanagement, incapacity, incompetence, irregularity, and unlawfulness, and no respect whatsoever for remedial action as prescribed by the Public Protector. Honorable Speaker, it finds itself today in an almost crippling state, in which there is no silver bullet or universal panacea that can be applied to return its operations to that of a healthy and well-functioning corporate entity. It will require concerted effort, time, energy, resources, and continuous oversight by the Department and this Parliament to ensure its eventual return to a model of good corporate governance and profit, whilst at the same time serving the broadcasting needs of all South Africans. Honourable Speaker, aside from its current status quo of abysmal operational, financial, and management defects, it is also straying with wanton impunity from the reserve of its founding charter. One example being its defiance of the corporation's code of practice in ensuring that its services provide for the equitable treatment of all segments of the South African population, and another being that it must provide for a wide range of audience interests, beliefs, and perspectives. The ultra vires decision in respect of the 90-10 content being played on SABC channels has in some instances alienated large sections of listener bases and is not only contrary to the express mandate as contained in the code, but also detrimental to the SABC as advertising revenues have tapered off, with business no longer being able to satisfactorily reach certain target audiences. Honourable Speaker, evidence before the committee, and as stated in our report, will show that the current Minister of Communications has not fulfilled her mandate as required by the Act. In certain instances, it seems that she has gone way beyond what was required of her and exerted undue pressure on the board and management to take decisions which one cannot be proud of. It is for this reason, amongst others, that as the IFP, supported by all the members, our report recommends that the President seriously consider removing the current minister from this portfolio. Senior positions also, Madam Speaker, must be filled with suitably qualified and experienced individuals, and the work of rebuilding the image and services of the public broadcaster must begin de novo. The lesson we've learned from this, Honourable Speaker, in the last few seconds I have, is that the keen interest that the public have taken in ad hoc committees like Nkandla and SABC behoves us as Parliament and all the committees to ensure that we use Rule 167 and have more of these kind of protracted hearings into organizations like ESCOM, SASA, SAA, amongst others. I think it will do governance good in South Africa, and it will serve the interests of the public well, and this Parliament can then hold its head up high. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Kubisa.
Honourable Speaker, thank you very much. Honourable members, the National Freedom Party welcomes the comprehensive report of the ad hoc committee established to inquire into the fitness of the board tabled here today. Perhaps it's important, Honourable Speaker, that one refers briefly to the terms of reference. Terms of reference for inquiry were wide-ranging, yet very specific. Among others, the committee had to interrogate the SABC's financial status and sustainability, the response of the SABC to the Public Protector report, the SABC response to recent court judgments affecting it, and the response of the SABC to ICASA ruling against the decision of the broadcaster to ban coverage of violent protest. Furthermore, the committee was tasked to investigate the current board's ability to take the legal binding decisions following the resignation of a number of non-executives, the board's adherence to the Broadcasting Charter, the board's ability to carry out its duties as contemplated in the Broadcasting Act, and several human resource-related matters such as governance, structures, appointment of executives, and the termination of services of the affected executives. As the report confirms, each and every one of these terms of reference were broken and violated by the SABC board. And the NFP believes that there needs to be consequences for that. Professor Magube and his entourage left us and he went to address the media, and he put the whole thing in disdain. In all fairness, Honourable Speaker, the board, I must say, it inherited some of the problems before. The board inherited an SABC which had become a terrain of political contestation, an organization where a total disregard and violation of governance has become the norm and the order of the day, where fiduciary duty has been assigned to the dustbin of corruption and nepotism. I must say, Honourable Speaker, the inquiry reported on here today interrogated multiple transgressions of the board in great detail, reflecting on suspicious deals, multi-choice deal, and many other deals, and a blatant disregard of the courts, disregard of the public protector recommendations and remedial action, disregard of the Auditor General report and ICASA. The inquiry also laid bare the editorial policies and regulations were undermined, flouted, and a climate of fear and distrust created at the SABC. The National Freedom Party critically evaluated the funding, observation, and recommendations contained in the report, and which we support and agree to. Two issues in particular which we feel strongly about is the interference of Minister Mtambu and the political oversight. The minister had to come into a meeting where the COO was to be appointed, and that came with an influence on who was to be appointed for that position. The Department of Communication is in deep crisis, and the minister has not been cracking the whip. Rather, she has been shown to interfere a great deal, and through her conduct has become complicit in the management of the SABC. Under her watch, The MOI of the SABC had been distorted, legislative confusion was introduced, and senior executives were appointed without following due process. And the National Freedom Party believes that if these recommendations that are contained here are implemented without delay, and if a firm time frame is set for the incoming board to comply, that the SABC may well be stabilized and eventually functioning in accordance with its mandate. South Africans have the right to unbiased information, and the SABC has primary responsibility to effect to this right, but could not happen if the SABC were to be governed in terms of unacceptable corporate practices, guided by a minister who understands
Honorable
what is
Kutisa,
required.
your time is
Therefore,
expired.
the NFP agrees with the report that this minister must resign, and the new incumbent must come in. Thank you.
Honorable Kwankwa.
Eneneni, Honorable Speaker, ibingumdudo wamasele phakwa SABC, but ndiyabona they are taking preemptive strike. Honorable Speaker, from the outset, I would like to take this opportunity to appreciate the hard work and the enduring professionalism of committee members throughout the life of this committee. For the first time in many years, the country and the African continent rewarded the committee with a resounding cheer for raising the bar of parliamentary oversight. Nowhere is this decision more evident than in the quality of the report that is tabled in Parliament today. Well done, colleagues. In fact, there are quite a number of recommendations that would more than help in forwarding the cause of building an SABC that adheres to its mandate as outlined in the Broadcasting Act and the SABC Charter. Chief among them are the need for the Memorandum of Incorporation to be amended in order to align it with the Broadcasting Act, the need for the interim board to engage with the Auditor General to address all its findings relating to irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, as well as the need to initiate disciplinary steps against any culprit, among others. The report also lays bare the central role the Minister of Communications played in the SABC quagmire, such as her role in amending the MOI. For these reasons, we must not mince our words in calling for the Minister of Communications to bite the dust. You will, however, recall that the committee did not accede to the UDM's request to give Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng a fair opportunity to give his side of the story, although to a large extent everything that was discussed in the inquiry centered around him. Subsequent to this request, and in a letter dated the 16th of February 2017, Majav Incorporated made a similar request, cautioning the committee about the dangers of its refusal to grant Mr. Motsoeneng an opportunity to state his side of the story. Majav attorneys quite correctly argues that the committee's refusal to give a hearing to Mr. Motsoeneng, I quote, has breached a foundational principle of our constitutional democracy, the right to be heard. These too fell on deaf ears. Some have incorrectly argued that all our call seeks to glorify Mr. Motsoeneng. Nothing could be further from the truth. We make this call because we know, as you all do, that he too deserves to be treated fairly like everyone else. As lawmakers, we should not only treat fairly those whom we like, and ill-treat all those we don't like. Regrettably, what started out as a good process will now go down with the double stigma of bias and illegitimacy. For these reasons, the United Democratic Movement does not support this report. Futhi abo banengxaki bangahamba bozichoma ngentambo esigcawu emthini wetumata. Asicunsulanga mntwini. Thank you.
Honorable Alberts.
Thank you, Speaker. Two conclusions can be made regarding the committee's process and the findings made. On the one hand, the report is a statement of how not to run a public enterprise, and on the other hand, how Parliament should actually exercise its oversight role. We wish to commend the ad hoc committee's aggressive and thorough interrogation of the affairs of the SABC. At the same time, we condemn the SABC's senior management's misconduct and abuse of power as laid bare in the report. We further condemn the SABC board's lack of proper oversight, save for those board members who have followed their conscience. We reserve special condemnation for the SABC's previous CEO and COO, Hlaudi Motsoeneng, and his ally, the Minister of Communications, Faith Mutambi, who flouted the law in every conceivable manner to ensure control over the SABC and the entrenchment of self-interest. Daar is sekere aspekte van die komiteeverslag wat spesiale vermelding verdien. Die SABC Raadvoorsitter se aktiewe ondermyning van die komitee deur sy weiering om te verskyn en inligting te verskaf is skreiend en sy poging om die ondersoek te stop deur hofaansoek is tekenend van sy disrespek vir die parlement en die vraag is hoe hy ooit aangestel is as voorsitter van die SABC. We have noted the financial mismanagement of the SABC and are ourselves taking action to ensure that those who have taken irresponsible decisions are held to account. In this regard, we are in a process of requesting the Companies Commission to investigate Hlaudi Motsoeneng's decision to increase the local content quotas before using all of the content acquired from foreign suppliers. This would have been paid in US dollars and will result in huge amounts to be written off by the SABC. We are asking the Companies Commission to hold Mr. Motsoeneng personally liable for this in terms of the Companies Act. Lastly, the Minister's circumvention of the Broadcasting Act and her further unlawful acts to intervene in the affairs of the SABC and to protect certain individuals is unbecoming of a minister who is supposed to uphold the rule of law and the Constitution. Gegee die gemors by die SABC kan mens jou net indink hoe dit by ander openbare ondernemings gaan. Die gelekte Dentons-verslag dui daarop dat dit nog slegter gaan by Eskom. Wat weer eens bevestig word deur hierdie gebeure is dat die regering nie in staat is om enige ekonomie sentraal te bestuur nie en moet hulle hande afhou van die privaat sektor. Based on this committee's work, we recommend the following steps: that Parliament appoints an ad hoc committee to investigate the veracity of the findings in the Dentons report and to continue its aborted investigation on another state enterprise, namely Eskom. That the SABC management be purged from personnel not appointed on merit, and that Minister Faith Mutambi be fired. Thank you.
The Honourable Carter.
Honourable Speaker, firstly apologies, but the actual list showed differently that the ACDP was first. Thank you. The SABC report sets out a sorry saga, a saga that is symptomatic of all that has gone wrong with the governance of our state. If all organs of our state were subjected to the same level of honest and rigorous scrutiny as that which we have witnessed in the SABC inquiry, similar abuses of power, corruption, capture, unethical conduct, and gross maladministration would be exposed. The report documents the gross abuse of power committed with impunity by a member of our executive and by a board and SABC executive gone rogue. It points to a parliament that for years has failed in its obligations and duties to exercise oversight and to hold those in power and authority accountable. It points to those in positions of power and authority having had license not to account. The ultimate question in all of this is, who gave the minister, the SABC board and its executive the license to act with impunity? Who coerced Parliament to abdicate its responsibilities, to not exercise oversight, and to not hold those in power and authority to account? Who has been pulling the strings? These questions are not answered by the report. It is the ANC and Mr. Zuma, the President of the Republic, to whom the question must be posed, and with whom the answer lies. All the values that underpin our Constitution and that are the difference between good and rotten governance have been violated, be it the supremacy of the Constitution, loyalty of the state to the Constitution and its people, the rule of law, oversight, accountability, efficient and effective governance. The SABC report sets out a sorry saga, a saga that is symptomatic of all that has gone wrong with the governance of our state under the once proud liberation movement. Nonetheless, the Congress of the People would like to thank the multi-party ad hoc committee for a sterling job done. Under the chairmanship of Honourable Vincent Smith, the committee worked tirelessly and performed a daunting task under strenuous circumstances within the time period. As the Congress of the People, we will support the report. It is crucial that the relevant authorities implement the committee's recommendations as a matter of urgency and that the appointment of an interim board is expedited. Now, I can hear that there's a cat on heat again in the House, but if the President has any iota of integrity left, he will fire the Minister with immediate effect. I thank you.
On a point of order, Chair.
What's the point of order, Honorable Khadebe?
On Rule 84, the Speaker just said the President does not have an iota of integrity. So that's insulting to them. Thank you.
Well, the Speaker is no longer on the podium. So she managed to get away from her issue just in time. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Speaker. This has been one of the most thorough and far-reaching inquiries that I, as a member of the ACDP, have been involved in at Parliament. And my thanks to all involved and the chairperson and all the staff. This is what Parliament oversight should look like, and this is what the public expect of us as parliamentarians. We were united across political lines in our focus of getting to the bottom of the rot that has beset the SABC. The inquiry made for riveting public viewing, with many citizens being encouraged to see us working together to expose problems at the public broadcaster. Regrettably, as highlighted by other members, the SABC did not accord Parliament the due respect it deserves, initially walking out of the inquiry, bringing a failed High Court urgent application to prevent the inquiry taking place, and then accusing it inter alia of bias and Motsoeneng bashing. While we admit that the funding model of the SABC needs to be reconsidered and we might not understand all the commercial sensitivities, let us make it very clear that we will not tolerate any disrespect for this august institution. What was also most disconcerting was the intimidation and death threats experienced by certain witnesses, mainly among the SABC 8. We consider these threats, which even continued whilst we were holding the inquiry, as a threat against Parliament itself. Witnesses should be free to give evidence before any parliamentary committee without any threats of intimidation. It also became very clear that there has been significant political interference at the SABC over many years. While this was not confined to the present minister, the committee found that the minister displayed incompetence in carrying out her responsibilities as the shareholder representative. The evidence also suggested major shortcomings in her conduct, particularly relating to her apparent failure to lodge the October MOI amendments, as well as her role in Mr. Motsoeneng's permanent appointment as COO. And we as the ACDP, therefore, consequently support the correctional recommendations suggested in the report. Now, we also focused on the conflict of laws between the Broadcasting Act and the Companies Act. The committee was of view that the Broadcasting Act clearly trumped the Companies Act. However, the SABC and the minister seem to hold a separate and different view. Whilst we therefore support the recommendation that if it was not abundantly clear, then the Broadcasting Act, being the principal act, must be amended to make it clear that it trumps the other Companies Act. We also, from the ACDP side, spent a lot of time going through the Auditor General's management letter, and whilst it is very clear that the SABC is not technically insolvent, its assets exceed its liabilities, there are serious concerns about its cash flow challenges, given the significant deterioration in its cash reserves. Lastly, the ACDP supports this report, but encourages that we have similar ad hoc committees looking at ESCOM and other parastatals as it is exercising our oversight function. Thank you, Speaker.
The Honourable Njaisa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson, rather Speaker. The role of ad hoc committee to inquire and to make recommendations regarding state departments, SOEs, and its subsidiary bodies is of great importance. Thank you, Putin. Just like this SABC, this is one of the subsidiary bodies that has got to be looked into thoroughly. The African Independent Congress is encouraged now that it has exercised complete oversight on the work of executive. After all, Minister Mtambi is an accounting officer in the communications department. We widely support this report's recommendation that an urgent interim board be constituted. This should herald a new dispensation in the area of broadcasting, where corporate governance, ethics, and integrity defines the order of the day. Board members should demonstrate independence, good governance, and to serve the public in a way that is expected and safeguard the ethos of broadcasting. Honorable Speaker, the report heralds a renewed sense of hope in the appointment of qualified, ethical, sober-minded Chief Operations Officer, CEO, and CFO. We appealed to all South Africans with the requisite skills and sense of patriotic vanity to respond to this call. We endorse the report's declaration that a forensic independent consultant should be appointed to investigate the finances of SABC, including legality of the contracts issued in the past, irregular appointments, salary increments, and performance bonuses that were paid to SAB staff during the period in question. AIC has always been convinced that the center in the SABC was shaky and mired in controversy. Honorable Speaker, we have seen how ICASA has been disrespected by the former SABC COO. The report of ad hoc committee salvages this situation. The SABC is to obliterate its current editorial policy, which was often at pains with work of the journalists. ICASA, Honorable Speaker, will be spared of some time, as many journalists now will be working in a very conducive environment, away from the spectacle of managerial intimidation and interference. Honorable Speaker, Minister Mtambi had appointed Mr. Mtswaneng using a Dutch instrument called Memorandum of Incorporation in terms of communities report. This instrument will be subject to investigation by newly appointed board. The AIC has not minced its words on the legality of Hlaudis Mtswaneng's appointment as the COO of the SABC. List his intellectual makeup, which may have been suspended. We cannot have SOEs that operate in obstruction or absolute impunity, Honorable Speaker. It is time now to ruffle feathers and demonstrate leadership. Parliament cannot sit in its metaphorical ivory water tower whilst the cat has been set among the pigeons. We endorse this report because the report now is going to take us forward. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Killian.
Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Ministers, colleagues here. First of all, just also from our side, a word of special thanks to Honorable Smith for his able stewardship of this process. And thanks to the opposition for having resisted the temptation to play petty politics with a matter that was of significant importance to South Africans. We had one common goal, Speaker, and that was to identify the extent and the root causes of the systemic governance failures of the SABC board. We had to find out, going forward, how this Parliament could ensure that the SABC fulfills its public mandate and upholds the values enshrined in the Constitution, the Broadcasting Charter, and other relevant legislative provisions. We all know that there was only one person standing at the time when the committee started its process, and soon thereafter he resigned. But the fact is, whether we like it or not, Honourable Chairperson and Speaker, the new Companies Act compels all directors and makes no distinction between executive and non-executive directors of companies to exercise fiduciary responsibilities. So consequently, the committee had to proceed with its work. The committee found that the SABC board had overall several years did not understand or did not execute its fiduciary duties. And I mean a whole lot of indications were already given in how many respects they have failed. I would like to focus on the fact that there were so many irregular, unplanned and unscheduled meetings called. That resulted in lack of quorum, in round-robin decision-making. Some of the approvals actually only adopted by a formal board meeting months after the event. Some board members failed to understand their oversight role, and they were manipulated by executives who had ulterior motives. They failed to understand their role to account to Parliament. The board closed their eyes to the harassment of newsroom staff and purging of others. They were oblivious about the apparent purging of highly qualified and experienced senior managers. The fact is, what were the root causes? Well, we've discovered, Honourable Speaker, that there was most definitely a role played from the Minister's office. There was an interchangeable use of the Broadcasting Act and the Companies Act when it came to the removal of board members. There was growing erosion of board powers to hold the executive management to account, and there was an erosion of their role vis-à-vis the disciplining of senior managers. Interference in the by management in newsroom activities really was totally unacceptable. Speaker, we must understand that there were some critical points in recent times. One of it was already mentioned by some of the members, was the appointment of the acting COO in a permanent capacity, Mr. Motswening. The ad hoc was not convinced that there was no pressure on the board to appoint Mr. Motswening. There was also evidence presented that the minister was involved in the irregular removal of some board members. They voted each other out of office. Cannot happen because that was totally irregular. And this matter is before the courts at present. Parliament was unfortunately also not an innocent bystander. Despite a legal opinion presented to the Committee on Communication that the board member removal was irregular, the Portfolio Committee unfortunately did not stand their ground to oppose the irregular removal of board members. And that calls for better oversight, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, as far as the MOI is concerned, the Memorandum of Incorporation, we have to indicate that the irregular changes to the Memorandum of Incorporation is posing a very serious risk to the SABC. Fact of the matter is, with a specific MOI having been registered with the Companies and Property Intellectual Company Commission, and another one being effectively implemented, it means that there is no legal basis for the delegation of authority framework. This means that some contracts and some disciplinary action against officials of the SABC could be ultra vires. It could expose the South African Broadcasting Corporation to significant legal challenges. This is a matter that the soon to be appointed interim board should address immediately. They should conduct a risk analysis for the SABC. Speaker, what we have learned from this process is that we need to review our laws and we need to make sure that they talk to each other. The Broadcasting Act is an act of special application. The company's law addresses specific matters relating to fiduciary responsibilities of directors, but the two must speak to each other. You cannot have one process to appoint your board through Parliament, through a public process, and then board members who have internal strife vote each other out. It cannot be like that. So we must amend and make sure that we address certain grey areas in the acts relating to the SABC. But the broadcasting amendment bill that was tabled in Parliament is not the answer. That bill will do away with Parliament's role to appoint the board members, and it will pave the way for direct interventions by the shareholder into the operations of the SABC. It will change the character of the public broadcaster completely. We can never sacrifice the principles enshrined in our Constitution: freedom of expression, access to information and public accountability, as well as the duty to promote our rich cultural heritage. The SABC is a special institution, and we must keep it like that. It belongs to all South Africans, irrespective of creed, language, or political affiliation. Its role is to educate and to entertain and ensure public broadcasting without commercial or political influence. The ad hoc has completed its task, and it now hands the report to Parliament for further action and to the Portfolio Committee on Communications. The interim board, once appointed, should restore stability and credibility.
Your time has expired.
And should take action against those executives who threaten and manipulate thousands of good people working at the SABC. Heads should roll. Thank you, Chairperson.
The Honourable Kowama.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable members, I want to thank also the Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Smith, and members of the committee. Honourable Speaker, Tlhaodi Motswening and the board are holding SABC hostage with these stooges. He has made SABC a headquarters of ANC propaganda. He has turned SABC to a state-controlled broadcasting. Our people are fed with distorted and skewed information. Honourable Speaker, the question is, how is this counterproductive force called Tlhaodi Motswening managed to hold our institution at ransom, terrorizing journalists like it's still apartheid times? It is truly a sin for this buffoon and courts to suppress and undermine our journalistic talents. Honourable Speaker, with Minister Mutambi and Tlhaodi Motswening at the helm, we are truly reversing the gains and sacrifice of great South Africans like the late Zwelakhe Sisulu and Percy Qoboza, who fought hard for independence of journalists and freedom of expression. Honourable Speaker, we need a board that is independent from political interference. We need to inject it with new ethos to serve our nation and her people. A public broadcaster must be the nation speaking to itself, unlike what Tlhaodi Motswening has turned it, turning SABC into a house of paranoia. We must act swiftly to prevent this truth from decaying further. To stop this, to put the SABC into a path of glory and stop from being government mouthpiece. While we support these recommendations, this experience must teach us not to trust the ANC, to always remain vigilant. For a mere fact that the Minister Faith Mutambi still parades herself in public, it is a shame and embarrassment to our nation. We really don't know whose interest is she serving. Honourable Speaker, an independent public broadcaster allows the nation to reflect and reflect upon itself. We should not allow ourselves to return to the dark ages of the past. I thank you.
The Honourable Mbinda.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As the PAC, we have been saying it here in this House time and time again that we are against the political interference by the ruling elite so as to advance and safeguard their interests and that of their masters at the expense of state institutions. And the SABC has just recently suffered from this. The South African Constitution guarantees press freedom and that we cannot attain it while the political principles make it their business to weaken the public broadcaster so that it is unable to discharge its duties, especially exposing wrongdoing in government by government officials. One of the greatest risks of allowing political interference is that when the ruling party is suffering from factionalism and of infighting that spread out to all institutions where the political interference has been ongoing for a long time, like it is the case with the SABC. Chairperson, Speaker, our public broadcaster has an important role to play in our society. And as PAC, we want to make it clear in this House today that the employment of people due to their political affiliation and or relations and not their qualifications, reputations, skills must be condemned with the contempt it deserves. As PAC, we have also noted the negative attitude of some of the political editors within SABC. It is our view as PAC that the changing of names of board members and hoping the situation will change itself might be a wishful thinking on our part. But what we need is a policy change in the running and dealings of SABC and its board. Underqualified people can no longer be given millions of rands in bonuses for doing absolutely nothing as part of noise making with no content advancing the cause of a particular faction of the ruling party. The PAC, however, supported the report and fully agree that in the interim, our public broadcaster needs leadership as a matter of urgency. However, in the medium to long term, we need to critically look at the policy framework as to avoid the massive wrongdoing our SABC is subjected to recently. Thank you.
The Honorable Godi.
Thank you, Speaker. The APC stands to welcome and support the report of the ad hoc committee on the SABC. The work of the ad hoc committee, by and large, put oversight and Parliament on a higher pedestal and consciousness of the public. By and large, it is a practice that can be emulated and enhanced by other committees in the House. The SABC is an important public entity whose good governance should be of concern to all of us. For some times, governance has been a challenge, leading to financial losses and instability of its boards and senior management. As we speak, the SABC has no board, and almost all senior managers are on an acting capacity. The process of strengthening or rebuilding the SABC starts with this House appointing boards that will serve their full term and have one agenda, which is the common good of the people. The appointment to permanent posts of senior managers to ensure that the SABC is run in compliance with the law. So for the SABC, so for all institutions of state that have shown weakness, distress, and going concern challenges. There is need for sustained engagement with the SABC. The only stain, Madam Speaker, of the entire process is the fact that the elephant in the room, called Claude Mutsweni, was not called to appear before the committee. And we hear some members describing him in very colorful language, and yet he did not have the opportunity to come and put his side of the story. And when we talk about looting and ailing institutions, it's unfortunate that we had to stop somewhere, but I know there is one advocate, Dalimpofu, who was the CEO of the SABC. And at the time when that institution was really on its knees, pocketed about 10 million rands as a golden handshake. And I think it is those kind of people
Point of order.
who should be called
Point of
upon
order.
to
Order,
assist us in
Honorable Godi.
understanding.
Can you take your seat, Honorable Godi?
Well, I'm
Can
done,
I
Honorable
take-
Speaker. No,
Can
I'm
I-
done.
Take a seat. Here's Scopa. Scopa is running away from accountability, Speaker. Look,
Well, he's gone.
the advocate of the people never did such a thing. Honorable God is deliberately misleading the House. It's regrettable. That's why he's running away.
Honorable Self.
Speaker, I want to commend the ad hoc committee for the rigorous way in which it conducted its inquiry into the SABC. The report reads like a horror story. It's a story of maladministration and corruption, of fear and intimidation, of nepotism and the abuse of power. At the center of the story sit two malignant individuals, Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng and the Minister of Communications. Like so many public institutions, the SABC has failed the public. Viewed cumulatively, the report portrays the SABC that it is indistinguishable from that which existed under apartheid. Biased, partisan, irresponsible, profligate, and unaccountable. As members of parliament, we need to introspect about how we allowed that to happen. Ultimately, it was left up to the public protector to expose the rotten state of the SABC in her report When Governments and Ethics Fail, released in February 2014. When we realized that the government and parliament would not implement the public protector's remedial action, the DA approached the courts in a two-part application. First, to suspend Mr. Motsoeneng and subject him to a disciplinary hearing, which the public protector had ordered, and secondly, to declare that his appointment as COO was irrational and therefore illegal. On the 24th of October 2014, we got an order compelling the SABC to suspend Mr. Motsoeneng and to subject him to a disciplinary hearing. He and the SABC sought leave to appeal. On the 23rd of April 2015, he was granted leave to appeal, but the SABC was ordered to implement the disciplinary hearing pending the appeal. He and the SABC appealed again. The case was adjudicated by the Supreme Court of Appeal on the 8th of October 2015, and the appeal was dismissed. On the 27th of November 2015, the Western Cape High Court reviewed and set aside the appointment of Mr. Motsoeneng as COO. He and the SABC appealed. On the 23rd of May 2016, leave to appeal was dismissed. The SABC and Motsoeneng petitioned the SCA for leave to appeal, and in September 2016, these petitions were dismissed by the SCA. The SABC then convened a sham disciplinary hearing against Mr. Motsoeneng in December 2015, which predictably exonerated him, as key witnesses were not called. The DA again approached the courts to review and set aside this disciplinary hearing. The SABC in turn applied for a stay to these proceedings. The application for a stay was dismissed on the 14th of June 2016. Judgment in the DA's case was delivered on the 12th of December 2016. The disciplinary hearing of December 2015 was set aside and a new one was ordered. And Mr. Motsoeneng's appointment as Group Executive Corporate Affairs was set aside, and the court ordered that he could not occupy any senior position in the SABC until after the disciplinary hearing. Mr. Motsoeneng and Mr. Aguma were ordered to pay our costs personally. Guess what? The SABC and Mr. Motsoeneng applied for leave to appeal. On the 7th of February 2017, this application for appeal was dismissed. At every stage, the SABC and or its executive directors were ordered to pay the DA's costs, which now amount to millions of rands. These cases show what happens when the board and its executive directors act with impunity. This culture of impunity must end in the public broadcaster immediately. Thank you.
The Honorable Khoza.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. First of all, let me also echo the appreciation from all the different political parties on the stewardship of Honorable Smith. This was indeed not a very easy process. Nevertheless, we managed to navigate through it. Unanimously, this committee agreed that bad governance compromises the financial status and sustainability of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. And it is within that context that the African National Congress, as a leader of society, takes into account the fact that if you want to lead a society, or if you assume a leadership position as a leader of society, you have to assume a high moral ground. Notwithstanding that, I have no doubt in my mind that the ad hoc committee was meticulous in execution of its task. It is within this context that the ANC is supporting this report. And because the ANC cannot resist logic and sense. Honorable members, the ANC's 53rd National Congress resolutions in Mangaung clearly state what has to be done about this SABC. And yet we were betrayed, and we have to say this clearly. We were betrayed by those entrusted with the responsibility of leading that institution. And as the ANC, because we are humble servants of our people, we are acknowledging that, and we are correcting what has been happening at SABC. Evidence emanating from the 2016-2017 parliamentary inquisitorial process on the SABC awakened us to the critical importance of the legislative authority, which is Parliament, to perform effective oversight over the executive. Honorable Speaker, it is within this context again that we draw our strength from the publication of James Davison Hunter in his book entitled The Death of Character, Moral Education in an Age Without Good or Evil. He has this to say, open quote, "We want strong morality, but without the emotional burden of guilt or shame. We want virtue, but without particular moral justification that invariably offend. We want good without having to name evil. We want decency without the authority to insist upon it," close quote. Honorable Speaker, it is within this context once more that this committee decided that for it to deliver on its mandate as entrusted by this honorable House, it had to assume the high moral ground. It was nevertheless disturbing, Honorable Speaker, that Prof. Maguve and the current acting CEO did not seem to understand the difference between the public service and the commercial service that the SABC has to perform. And Honorable Speaker, we wish to remind them that Part 4 of Section 11D and E of the Act states the commercial services provided by the corporation must subsidize the public services to the extent recommended by the board and approved by the minister, and be operated in an efficient manner so as to maximize the revenues provided to each shareholder, close quote. Honorable Speaker, it is therefore important that we make sure that SABC is turned around and returns to its profitability, because it is through those revenues that we are going to get from the commercial services of SABC that we shall be able to deliver on our public service mandate. Although the SABC punches holes on the evidence led by its own former senior staff members and alleges that they were guilty of gross misconduct, it is very disturbing, Honorable Speaker, to note that the very staff accused of gross misconduct were actually given gold handshake by the very SABC when terminating their contracts. Honorable Speaker, we have to go into the root causes of some of the questionable transactions. Without that, there is no way we can bring the SABC to its financial sustainability. We have Vision View contracts, the new age media arrangement, the multi-choice agreement. All these contracts are extremely questionable, and we are hoping that this interim board that is coming in is going to get into the root cause of this. And Honorable Speaker, we wanted to say in supporting this report, we want to make sure that the SABC cash flows are returned back to their normalcy. As Honorable Swart has already said, we are extremely concerned about the cash reserves of the SABC. They've been shrinking in an alarming pace. I mean, within 4 months, the SABC has almost lost more than 40% of its reserves. And we don't think this is a healthy financial situation. On that score, Madam Speaker, we are saying the SABC will also have to review the policies that have been adopted, which have led to the net loss of 411 million rands during the 2015-2016 financial year. And in our view as a committee, we attribute this to the net effect of the SABC erratic, ill-processed policy choices that have cost the public broadcaster millions of rand. We are therefore, Madam Speaker, tabling this report to say, as the ANC, we support it, and we are also welcome the fact that all the other parties worked with us because they do believe that the public broadcaster is a strategic asset and that we have to defend it at all costs. And I welcome all the positive contributions that we received from the other members, from the other parties. And I want to say, keep it up. That's how South Africa would prosper. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Khoza. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honorable Chair, we move that the report be adopted by this House.
Thank you very much. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Oh, okay, sorry.
Corner Mama, UDM, please.
Thank you very much. The objection of the UDM is noted. Can I ask the Secretary? The report is therefore adopted. I now ask the Secretary to read the second order of the day.
Consideration of recommendation of candidates to fill vacancies on Council of Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, Council, ICASA.
Thank you, Honorable the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable Matlakwana.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and good afternoon, members. The Portfolio Committee on Communication, having considered the request from the Minister of Communication to fill 2 vacancies in the CASA Council, the committee advertised the call for nominations of persons to serve in ICASA, and we received 35 of the applicants. We interviewed in public 6 of them after shortlisting, and we, as the subcommittee, we tabled our report to the committee, and the committee endorsed our report. I must say the committee unanimously agreed on two of the applicants, namely Advocate Portia and Ms. Nomonde Kongeka. However, the third name, Ms. Palisakade, was agreed by the committee, but the DA abstained from that third name. The reason why, or the reason they put forward, was that the person who was part of the interview from the DA was not there, who went through the CV, who interviewed the people with us, was not part of the committee, where we endorsed the three names. The committee therefore submits or recommends to the House the names of Palisa Kadi, Advocate Kongeka, and Advocate Kosha and Ms. Kongeka. Those names will be forwarded through processes of Parliament so that these three people are the two people out of three are part of the council. Remember, the council of ICASA are the people who take decisions, and they are all of them full-time. Whoever in these three works somewhere else will have to resign from that employment and be full-time in ICASA. Those are the names, House Chair, that we recommend for approval by the House, as I've submitted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I now put the question. The question before the House is that the following list of candidates be submitted to the Minister of Communications for consideration for the appointment as councillors to ICASA. I have a request, time for declaration by parties. I will now recognize the DA.
Agbare voorsitter en lede van die huis, die DA onderskryf die aanstelling van advokaat Dimakatso Kotka en my Nomandi Konpeka om 2 vakatures in die Okosa Raad te vul. Ons maak egter ten sterkste beswaar teen die insluiting van die derde kandidaat, Mapalesi Kadi. Sy beskik nie oor die voldoende vaardighede en ondervinding en haar insluiting op die lys was prosedureel gebrekkig. Ondanks die feit dat 'n onderhoud deur die komitee met haar gevoer was sy nie gekies as een van die finale kandidaate nie. Op 23 November 2016, toe die komitee die finale keuses bespreek het, was Makari glad nie ter sprake of bespreek nie. One of the candidates we discussed on the final day was Mr. Lyndon Petzer. He is one of South Africa's most respected specialists on radio frequency spectrum, and his skills are much needed on ICASA's council. He has a vast amount of experience and subject knowledge and was the DA's preferred candidate. Surprisingly, Makari was introduced to the list on 20 February 2017. This because of the failure of 2 of the other candidates to receive police clearance. She was not the first choice of any of the parties, but the ANC preferred to accept her inadequacies rather than appoint Mr. Petzer, the best person for the job. This move that further aggravates the dearth of appropriately skilled technical people on ICASA's council gives credence to the view that undermining the integrity of ICASA is a deliberate ANC strategy. The DA maintains that the process was flawed and that Makari is by no means suitable for the council. The DA further argued that rules state that the National Assembly must submit a candidate list with at least 1.5 times more candidates to the Minister for endorsement if the number of posts to be filled were more than 1. Therefore, in terms of this provision, Mr. Petzer's name should have been added to the list, but he ended up a casualty of the ANC's insistence on incompetency and underscores its bias towards broadcasting knowledge at the expense of telecommunications. The recent collapse of the SABC due to an absolute failure to properly vet and monitor board members and senior officials should serve as a warning to all parliamentary committees making selections in the future. Wanneer dit kom by Okosa en ander liggame wat deur die staat befonds word, moet ons versigtig wees ten einde te verseker dat politieke agendas nie ons oordeel vertroebel by die kies van kandidaate wat belastingbetalers van Suid-Afrika moet dien nie. We as members of this House need to start taking our responsibilities and mandates seriously by ensuring that vacant positions are given to the best candidates. We condemn state entities to perpetual failure by packing their boards with inadequately skilled comrades. And this House must shoulder some of the blame for these entities' failures. Die DA erken Okosa se onlangse beslissing om 'n aansoek deur ETV teen te staan om sy lisensievoorwaardes te wysig ten einde hul nuusuitsendings uit die spittydgreef te verskuif. Dis 'n belangrike mylpaal en die versekering dat 12 miljoen Suid-Afrikaners wat staat maak op nuusuitsendings in spitstyd as 'n bron van inligting sal voortgaan om toegang tot nuusuitsendings op 'n redelike tyd te hê. We as the DA look forward to ICASA's response to our request to conduct an inquiry in the recent proliferation of fake news in South Africa's broadcast media space. Die DA sal voortgaan om te geveg vir elke burger se reg tot akkurate inligting en om te verseker dat alle besluite geneem word in belang van elke Suid-Afrikaner. Dankie.
The UDM.
The UDM supports this one. ICASA plays a very important role as an independent regulatory body of the South African telecommunications and broadcasting sector, and it does this in the interest of the public. ICASA has to be effective in regulating the South African Broadcasting Corporation so that it plays its role as a public broadcaster in the public interest and promote democracy. Mayiqiniseke into yobana isebenzele ilizwe lonke, not abantu abathile. The filling in of the vacancies in this institution should go a long way in ensuring that ICASA continue to be an effective regulator. In its nature, ICASA should be about protecting citizens' interests and play its role as a watchdog for a democratic society. It is therefore required to be effective and truly independent. ICASA has to be transparent, accountable, and participatory, and be run professionally by people who have the requisite knowledge and skills to discharge this important societal task. We have confidence that the recommended names will add value to the mandate of ICASA in its discharge of duties, and make sure that, we hope that ICASA would make sure that radio stations, umzekelo, umhlobo wenene, umhlobo wenene sisitishi sesiXhosa, kodwa lately sifumanisa into yobana kwabafana batsha abathanda uthetha isingesi kakhulu. Yasigulisa ke thina lento yabafana namantombazana amancinci athetha isingesi bangeva abantu kodwa bebethe bathi tyunini kumhlobo wenene. I'm sure kunjalo ke nakwezinye ilwimi kukho lutsha lufunde kwezi zikolo former model C. ICASA mayiqiniseke into yobana iyayinqanda loo nto leyo ekubeni bisitishi sase-Afrikaans thethe i-Afrikaans ungabe kuxutywa-xutywa. Silindele loo nto ke kwaba bantu abatyunjele ukuba bangene apha. Enkosi.
Enkosi Datu Filtane, EFF.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Really 3 points that we want to make. We cannot as well put our weight behind the last name for the obvious reasons of procedure. Our recommendation, as a matter of fact, was that for any additional candidate to be found, we've had to restart the process to find a suitable candidate. But I think that we must also record that it's concerning that the Minister of Communications is not in the House to hear these recommendations, including the recommendations on the last item. I think Parliament has to express itself that when important recommendations like members of the board that she has to apply her mind on are being submitted and she's not here, it's really concerning. So we want to register that that will result in the same type of incompetence that she displayed in relation to the SABC. And so it was important for her to come and hear some of the substantial disagreements that happened around these recommendations. And as the EFF want to put it on record, that in as much as we are comfortable with the first two names, in relation to the last name, because of these procedural flaws, we cannot support. Thank you very much.
NFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Honorable members of the House, let me also acknowledge the President of my leader, Zanele Magwaza Msibi. Honorable Chairperson, the National Freedom Party welcomes the report tabled here today by the Portfolio Committee on Communications. Chairperson, the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa plays a pivotal role in regulating our communications, broadcasting, and postal services sector. The National Freedom Party expresses its concern with the lapse of time since the office of the previous chairperson of the Council expired on the 20th of June 2015. This means that ICASA had to function for more than 19 months now without the benefit of a guiding hand of a chairperson. Moreover, the vacancy which arose with the resignation of former councillor Dr. Marcia Sosikwa has now existed for 25 months. We submit that such vacancies is counterproductive to the requirements for effective governance, and the longer these vacancies persist, the longer it will take ICASA to be operational at maximum capacity. Honorable Chairperson, we need to have a closer look at our processes in facilitating nominations of this kind. We understand the restrictions which public participation places on the pace at which nomination processes is managed, but we have to find ways to expedite the process. State bodies such as ICASA can only function at a maximum capacity if they have the full complement of expertise available to it as provided for in legislation. If we are to make our democracy work the way it is intended, then we need to ensure that undue delays in the filling of vacancies to deal with as swiftly as possible. To conclude, Honorable Chairperson, the National Freedom Party supports the recommendations contained in the report tabled here today. I thank you.
The AIC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. As AIC, we also support the appointment of 3 councillors into ICASA. We know very well that the filling of vacancies in any institution does give hope. That ICASA has been, without these 3 councillors, has been a very big gap indeed. So this means now the work has not been done properly. This also now contributes a lot to the reduction of unemployment, which is one of the challenges that is facing our country. We therefore, as AIC, support that the people should be appointed so that now there's a lot of people that is getting work in our countries. Thank you very much.
The ANC.
Ndo livhuwa mudzulatshidulo la buthano la lushaka sa ANC ri tikedza muvhigo wa komiti ya zwa vhudavhidzano. We support the report largely, Chairperson, because the 3 recommended candidates proved beyond reasonable doubt in the interviews that they have the necessary expertise and experience in the media industry and possess suitable qualifications. We are satisfied as the ANC with the selection process that involved participation by the public in the nomination process, as required by the ICASA Act that led to 35 nominations, as reported by the chairperson. We can report to this August House, Chairperson, that the 3rd candidate that the other colleagues are objecting, Palesa Kadi, is a dynamic youth activist who is currently an executive in the Film and Publication Board. Very excellent in corporate governance and media development. And as the ANC, we are confident that if she's considered for appointment as a councillor, she can make a meaningful contribution in taking the regulator to greater heights like the other 2 candidates. We want to thank all the candidates that supported this report, and to those that have objected, we want to indicate that we have given you ample time to convince us to agree to your candidate, and you dismally failed. As the ANC, once more, we support the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This brings us to an end of the declarations. Are there any objections?
House Chairperson, if I may,
The Independent Communication Authority, the Act governing ICASA, requires that the recommendations to the President are made after a process involving public comment and also a public advertisement. And I would like to seek your guidance whether the person who was injected into the process at a later stage has met the requirements in terms of the Act, in terms of the publication and public comment around that particular name. And we'd seek your guidance on that matter.
Thank you very much, Honorable Steenhuisen. I will have to confer with the chairperson, but from his presentation, there was no suggestion that there was no process, all processes were not followed. But maybe we can ask the chairperson of the committee to clarify. Chairperson?
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, the vacancies were advertised. The subcommittee of the Portfolio Committee shortlisted and interviewed. All parties were part of the interviewing process, including Honorable Phumzile van Dam, who's part of the subcommittee of the Portfolio Committee. So I don't know where DA missed all this, but all processes were open, interviews were done in an open platform. We interacted with them. So in our view, and process of parliament were all followed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. It looks like there's a dispute that all the names that are recommended here were part of the process. Can you just clarify that all the names that were put forward, were they part of the...
All of them, Honorable House, were part of the 6 that were shortlisted. The Pali Sakad that apparently is a dispute, she was part of that. In fact, she's part of the first 3 members who were interviewed in the presence of everybody from the committee.
Thank you very much. Honorable Steenhuisen, I was also just being advised that the report was actually publicized in February to allow for public comment, if any. And I'm not sure whether there might be any other processes in your view that were not followed.
House Chairperson, thank you very much. It was the late injection of the CV of the candidate who was in dispute. And I have a concern that sections 5(1)(a) and (c) of the ICASA Act have not been followed. But if you're giving the House the assurance that that has been done, obviously we have to accept that. But I believe it's very difficult to shortlist and to involve the public in a process when somebody is injected into that process at a very late stage as a shortlisted candidate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Steenhuisen, for your understanding. But from the clarification, it does seem that all the candidates that are now recommended to the House were part of the shortlist that happened in the committee, and in terms of the processes, they actually met all the criteria. I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. And those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairperson.
Thank you.
The DA calls for division. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Waters. In terms of Rule 108, I will now allow one member of each political party wishing to make a declaration. Sorry, that has been made. Sorry, I now allow one member. One moment. Apologies, honorable members, you have already expressed yourselves in your declaration. We are now doing the division. I'd like to remind members that a division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes.
Watching SABC News. Well, this is a live crossing to the National Assembly this afternoon, where Parliament's ad hoc committee report into the affairs of the South African Broadcasting Corporation has just been adopted by the House. Now, it was tabled this afternoon for approval. The report has been largely welcomed by MPs and peppered with calls for exploring even criminal culpability for some of the individuals involved. Now, it has been a long, sometimes very tedious but very necessary process that's taken about 3 months to reach this point. We have been listening to MPs all afternoon responding to the report tabled by chairperson of the inquiry, Mr. Vincent Smith, about an hour ago or more. Now, this debate will be one of the final steps before the recommendations into the report can indeed be implemented. It is a comprehensive 74-page report we're talking about that includes a summary of the evidence, observations and recommendations. It does follow the outcome of the inquiry into the affairs of the SABC that we provided coverage on right here on this news channel. The final report was adopted at committee level 11 days ago already. It contains close to 50 recommendations. Now, these include the formal dissolution of the existing SABC board. Now, all these recommendations can only be implemented after the final approval of the report by the National Assembly. Now, the House has also been deliberating appointments in the last few minutes to fill posts on ICASA's council. ICASA has been without a chairperson for 2 years now. Now, the body does play a crucial regulatory role in South Africa's telecommunications and broadcasting sector. You're watching the SABC News channel. We'll be back with more news after a short break. Let's move on to some other news. Embattled Social Development Minister Batabile Dlamini has denied